If you've seen some of my other reviews, you'll know that the watch I'm wearing here, the Marlowe Le Monde Chronoscope, this is the vintage coffee color edition, is my all-time favorite chronograph watch that has an ST19 movement, a Seagull ST1901. And you know, I've worn this in a lot of other reviews as a good comparison. When I'm showing the exhibition case back on this, it's just blows people away about what an interesting watch it can be. And the reason I've got this on today is I finally found another Microbrand watch that, yes, we're stocking in the Microbrand store, that I think gives this watch a run for its money, and I'll explain why in this video. But just to give you an idea, they've just taken the one off my wrist here, and what makes this so special is the movement inside. Obviously I love the styling on here, and I actually think this black styling is really hard to beat. It goes so well with the straps and everything. Yeah, the real kind of thing that got me so excited about this watch, and actually you know, was one that I purchased. I didn't just get it at wholesale price or anything. It was this movement inside. It's just an amazing movement. I mean, that's just it running normally, but if I was to, like, you know, start the chronograph running, you know, you get to see even more things in action. So it's really cool. It's an exciting movement to have, and one that's very enjoyable. And there's also a lot of history behind this movement, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But let's talk about these watches now and talk about why I think this is giving the Marlowe a run for its money, which is pretty exciting for me. I actually got so excited I couldn't do this review for a few days. And you know me, when I review a watch, even one that I'm selling, I will say the positives and the negatives and give people the choice. They can draw their own conclusion. I never hold back, even if it's not something that you would normally say as a retailer. I just put it all out there on the table. And I have to say, these watches here have me super excited that I had to kind of calm down before I even did the review. And the reason I'm so excited, obviously they have the same kind of exhibition case back on the back, which we'll get into in a minute. But what makes this one so particularly exciting, it's got several things that just add an extra level to an ST19 chronograph. And the first one is this dial here. Apart from being kind of an unusual peach color, it's an extremely light tan. It's not yellow, it's not orange, it is actually brown. It can kind of look a little bit yellow in strong outdoor light. I'm inside in an office here, so it's showing off the kind of color I wanted to show, which is somewhat unusual. But what makes this so interesting is, first of all, apart from the wonderful exhibition case back and being a fantastic hand-wound movement, I found these to be very reliable. The second thing is, this is a full reverse lume dial. I will make it dark and do nighttime viewing in a minute, but just to give you an idea what I mean by full reverse lume, see that lighting up glowing green? You get the idea, right? The whole dial just lights up like a torch. The lume on these is extremely well done. So that's a big plus. So a huge plus on this. Another plus, I just got fingerprints all over the back, of course, and I will show this in more detail in the second half of the video. But this movement in the back isn't just a nice hand-wound movement. This one has an extra feature known as a Swan neck regulator. Swan neck regulator. Sorry about my pronunciation there. And the advantage of that is if you're obviously used to dealing with watches and you've got all the equipment like a time grapher and you tinker, even if you're good at that, probably having a Swan neck regulator is going to be useful for you. But if you're the typical amateur person who hasn't got a time grapher and you have to make an adjustment, I'll let it run for a while to see how well it's doing. If you want to get the time more accurate, you know, there's basically, oh, well, let's just jump in on this. I was going to do this at the end, but let's explain about this as we're on the subject. I have a picture here just to blow it up a little bit. So I just thought it would be easier than doing a macro shot with a large hand coming in with a pointer. So this is the device you use to increase or decrease how fast it's running per day to make it as close as possible to 0 seconds a day. You know, depending on the position and how much it's wound, it could be running a little fast, a little slow. And then normally you don't get this thing in red. I've colored this red. It's not normally red and green. You just get this lever that's in green, and then you have to kind of knock it to the left or to the right to make it slower or to make it faster. and it's a little stiff because you don't want it moving around when it's on your wrist and being normally worn, and just a fraction of a movement can make a huge difference in the number of seconds accuracy. And you have to be very careful. So you could be knocking it and you might go way too far, and then you knock it back a little bit. It's very hard to get very exact increments. And it's a bit of play backwards and forwards. So you might be spending a week trying to get this regulated and end up no better than you were before if you don't have the equipment. But the advantage of a Swan neck regulator is obviously a screw-down case back, so you unscrew the case back. And then this is actually a spring. This is why it's called a swan neck. It's in the shape of a swan's neck. And it's basically, there's a screw that goes through here with a screw head, so you just use a very fine screwdriver to turn the screw one way or the other, and that means you can get a consistent adjustment on this, forwards or backwards, depending on whether you turn the screw clockwise or anti-clockwise. It's very consistent. It's going to be doing adjustments of less than the kind of width of a hair, so it's basically, or thickness of a hair. So you can get very fine precision adjustments in the correct direction and probably not go too much in one way or the other. So you can very quickly get a watch adjusted based upon how you wear it. Every watch is different. From the factory they can run fast or slow. And also how you wear it's different. In the dial up position here, it typically runs fast. Which is if you're sitting at your desk working on a computer, that's good, but then maybe you have the crown up position or crown down position, depending whether you're left or right handed walking around, or maybe you're doing something else. So these other positions based upon gravity will affect how fast your watch runs, as well as particularly how much the watch is wound and how fully wound you tend to keep your watch. So having the ability to adjust a watch, it's a fun thing. Many of us don't really care. We're just going to wind a watch, put it on the wrist, and then put a different watch on the next day. But for those of us that like to tinker or like to have something accurate, this gives you the ability to do so in a very easy way. So that just really wants to paint a kind of like high-level picture for you that I think it's a big plus. I will mention one very important point, however, for those who want to rush out and buy a Swan neck regulator watch. That will typically invalidate your warranty if you unscrew the case back to play with your watch here, obviously. And you do need to take good care and keep a very clean environment. So, it's obviously not for the faint of heart in some respects, but anybody who's a watch collector will know that it will cost money to send off to somebody to regulate your watch and then to get it back, and it will cost money to get it serviced. So the time you're done, you're spending a fair amount of money, and you can do these adjustments yourself and just play, and it's just so much easier. So I find that's a really big plus. So we already have 2 pluses with this watch that got me super excited. And there is a third. So the fact that the particular colorway is an unusual color and a full reverse loom that's actually very strong is a plus. A third plus is you would be, if you're trying to get focus on the edge of the crystal here, you can see it's kind of magnifies, it's got a distortion effect, it's got a nice curvature to it, very much like an acrylic crystal, from the 1970s. Basically, it's very vintage vibe to it. I mean, the whole design on this is actually based upon a 1970s British military pilot's watch, which is why you've got particular subdial markings on the right and the arrow at the bottom and so on. But this gives you that vibe, but this is actually double dome sapphire crystal. I've tested it with my diamond tester here. It is sapphire crystal, so that's great. And then also on the back, they didn't cut corners. They also have a sapphire crystal on the back as well. So this is a well done watch. 100 meters water resistant, gives you the equivalent to a dive watch. The other watch I was wearing earlier, the Lomond, is just your typical 50 meters water resistance, good for washing your hands. I wouldn't really want to wear it to go swimming, but you probably could. Obviously, these are not necessarily screw-down crowns because you've got chronograph pushers as well, so it's not going to be as robust as a dive watch because you don't want to bang these pushers underwater. But the point, and you've got just using seals here, but the point is that it's got a lot more water resistance that makes it a very good field watch too, not just a chronograph. So that's another plus. And then functional wise, apart from, really enjoying the movement on the back, the functionality of this is actually really well thought through. I can tell Hemel put a lot of thought into this. And Marvin, who runs the brand, is just an awesome guy. I've been so impressed with him. He also runs a Facebook group, the League of Watch Microbrands, which I can thoroughly recommend. And just likes to help people and help other microbrands. And he's been great to do business with. He seems very responsible. The brand's got such a good reputation, and we really should have partnered with him a long time ago, to be honest. But when I saw the Hemel Airfoil, first time I saw that, I knew this was the one as soon as I saw the full reverse lume. This just drew me immediately. So this is why this watch is giving a run for the money for the Le Monde. I think stylistically, it's a pity you can't buy these anymore, but the Marlowe Le Monde, black versus black, I think, the Le Monde has more style to it, perhaps a little bit, though this is a really nice black as well. But when I want to tick a lot of boxes, full reverse lume, Swan regulator, and a vintage vibe, this one actually beats it. They're both 42 millimeters. It's got a very nice, excuse my fingerprints, but it's got a very nice basic polished case to it. So the design is really good. And the functionality of this bezel is just awesome. You've actually got 3 functions. Everyone who sees a 12-hour bezel and a chronograph thinks, oh, okay, you've got a second time zone, because clearly you can move this. So if this was like an 8-hour time difference or something, or let's say it's maybe a 4-hour time difference, you can see 2 different times, based upon where the hour-minute hands are. So if this was 7:22 or whatever it is, I'm looking at this through the camera lens, then in one country you could see it's actually 11:22 in another. So obviously that is a well-known feature. But there's 2 other things you can do with this type of bezel that are not necessarily obvious. The first one is, and this is really important for a chronograph is a timer basically. So as well as having the hours and minutes that you normally get, and then the actual seconds for the normal time is actually on the left here. This one's not wound. I can wind it if you want. But you've just got the hours, the minutes, and the seconds for what the time of the day is. But they've also got a timing function, so you can use a stopwatch, basically. That's pretty much what a chronograph is. So this main second hand, actually, let's just get this wound, gives you, I don't need to wind it very much, just a few seconds would be enough. Will give you a timer function. So as this goes round, these minutes increase on the right subdial. So you basically have a stopwatch, stop and start. You can stop and start it again, and then a reset that's instantly flashed back to the top because it's a mechanical. So the other advantage of having, well, one of the other advantages, the chronograph advantage to having a 12-hour, is that you could set this pip to your hour hand. So the pip here is aligned with the hour hand here, and then you now have 12 hours of timing on your chronograph. In fact, you could even do it separately to the chronograph. Just by setting the pip on a 12-hour timer to the hour hand, you can count a 12-hour period, and with nice half-hour intervals delineated on the dial. And obviously you've got half hour on the right subdial anyway. So this gives you a 12-hour register for a chronograph function if you want it. So that's a real good plus, and the reason I particularly like this choice of marking on the bezel as opposed to whatever telemetry tachograph. I probably mispronounced them all. We want to measure the speed of movement or the speed of sound or whatever. Those are nice, but not very practical for most people, unless you're into something in particular. But just for general timing, this 12-hour bezel gives you that extra. And then the third function, this is obviously a waterproof watch in terms of water resistance, I should say, 100 meters. This is a 120-click unidirectional ceramic bezel, so it's also scratch resistant, same as the double dome sapphire glass. You can do the traditional dive watch timing, and this is a very good bezel, no back play, very clean, very clear, very crisp, very easy to turn, not too tight, but doesn't feel loose either. So you could set that to the minute function and then just use it as a normal dive watch bezel. Sure, you don't have 60 minutes mark, but it's very easy, 5 times multiplication tables. So if you're around to number 3, basically, that's 15 minutes if the minute hand's gone round to there. So it's pretty easy to use it for that function as well. So this is a really versatile watch, and that's one of the reasons I completely fell for it. I just think it's so well done. You got the vintage fibe with the domed sapphire crystal that has a really nice kind of very old-fashioned style kind of curved edge to it. And just the overall look of it's just awesome. I think this is extremely well done. You've got a nice leather strap. It is genuine leather, I note, which is actually not a strong plus. That's usually a negative, believe it or not, because genuine leather is the lowest grade of leather. So there we go, one minor negative. But the straps are extremely well done. That I think they're going to be long lasting. They are quick release. I've got this upside down for the genuine leather. In fact, now you can see this movement running. So here we go. So yeah, genuine leather. And the movement's ticking away there. But the clasp is just a buckle, but it's got unusually it's got double signing on the buckle. So you've got Hemel on the top and on the bottom here. But it's quite robust, quite strong. I think this is going to be long lasting, and the color goes extremely well. I call this a peach color, but it really is an incredibly light tan. They call it the Ivory, so this is the full lume Ivory. It is a panda dial, if you think of it like a cream panda, maybe a coffee cream, getting back, or milk coffee or something, or latte. But it's got definitely that peach look to it. And I know that when I look at other brands like Zelos, and they have, let me think of a good example. So they have like the Zelos Nova. The first color to sell out was this salmon colored dial, which is actually fairly similar. It's not quite salmon. Salmon maybe is a little bit more orange, but it's kind of in that family. So I think this is a hit, pretty much. I've had that confirmed. We've had these for sale in the Microbrand store, and we are now kind of sold out already, even though we just stocked them just before the weekend. Put a weekend listing up, only put it on Facebook, only on Instagram, no newsletter, nothing else, no big fuss over it, and they just went boom, you know, a complete stock. These ones have gone. I think we've got one of these left. So definitely super exciting. This third watch, by the way, is a different watch from Hemel. I didn't want to confuse you about that, but I just wanted to bring this in as kind of a bonus, and also an alternative if you prefer a more steel look. So let's talk a little bit more about the colorways here. So we have the one I mentioned that I particularly like, that I think is the one to go for. Personally, the full lume Ivory Panda, because it's got the full lume, which just makes it awesome. But if you want something that's going to go with more different clothing, more outfits, then this black one is actually a really nice one too. I mean, it's exactly the same on the back. You can't really tell the difference, obviously. It's identical. The case is the same, it's just a different colorway pretty much. So the black is a very sophisticated color. You can actually change this to black straps. It goes really easily. The dimensions on the straps are 22 millimeters. I've seen them in other places on the internet listed at 20, but it is 22. I've measured this and I've confirmed it, and it should be 22. So they're very easy to get aftermarket straps. I have a ton here I could wear with this watch. So this is more versatile compared to the peach color. Peach color pops and is more interesting. So it's really horses for courses, whatever your personal taste is. Two really nice colors. There is a third color, which is the same black bezel you see on here, but it's a kind of a dark blue dial. I didn't stock that one because I thought it didn't quite, the blue didn't go with anything, and it would have needed to have matched to something else, blue stitching or something, and it kind of looked, to me, it did. Some people are going to love it. It's just my personal taste, but I try and stock stuff in the store that I think works. Sometimes I stock stuff that's not my taste, but I'm strongly persuaded by another staff member. But pretty much that one didn't kind of appeal to me the way that these two. So I wanted to stock a black, so we have some alternative color that's more usable with a more wider range of wardrobes, and I wanted to stock this one because this one is going to be pretty collectible for people. But we did pass on the blue. There is a blue color, and you can probably get that directly from Hemel if you're interested in it, but it's just the dial that's blue. It's not a sunburst blue. These are all matte, and you do have a black bezel. Perhaps if the bezel was blue as well, then maybe we might have carried that one too, because blue is a popular color as well. But the combination of the black and a dark blue didn't quite do it for me. I mean, you can have a black and a teal or something like that. That can go quite well sometimes, but you know, I didn't feel that worked for me. So this third watch, let's give you the dimensions before we move on. So I mentioned the lug width is 22 millimeters, a very standard size here. Going to give you the prices as well. Gosh, I just jumped in on the Swan neck regulator and everything. So 100 meters water resistance. The size of the diameter of this is 42 millimeters, just the same as this one, I believe. This should be 42. Well, this could be 44. Gosh. It's been such a while since I reviewed this one. But these are 42 millimeters, which is a very good size. It suits men with a medium wrist. It suits men with a large wrist. It suits men with a slightly smaller than medium wrist, but it probably won't suit somebody with an extremely small man's wrist. But it's kind of like the middle ground that covers the widest range of wrist sizes on men's wrists. So 42, excellent size. So 42 millimeter diameter excluding the crown. It's 49 millimeters lug to lug, which is kind of typical for a 42, so that's good. Another thing that I really like about this, officially Hemel tell us it's 13.8 millimeters on the height. Look at that lovely signed crown there. But the height on this, and I measured to the top of the bezel, top of the sapphire crystal from the bottom of the case with my digital calipers on both of these watches, came out each time to 13.4 millimeters. So that's even better. That's actually quite thin if you consider it's dive watch, 100 meters water resistance. It's got subdials. It's got a complicated mechanical chronograph movement in there. So, you know, for 13.4 millimeters, that's awesome, and it's just the perfect size. So I think they really nailed that. They did a good job. Obviously, marine grade stainless steel. And I'll talk about the movement a bit more, give you a little bit more of the history of the movement, because this is really interesting too. That's one of the reasons, not just the look on the back, but the movement history is fascinating. And actually, there's a lot of mistakes people make about this, so we will cover that as well. And then the price point. So this is interesting. The retail price on this is just under $500, you know, give or take. So for a sub $500 watch, with all these features, extremely well made. You get the 2-year warranty from Hemel. Hemel are not a new Microbrand. That's a big plus for people worried about Microbrands. Hemel as a company has been around since 2012. I think other models like this one I'm going to review over here in a minute has been around for like 3 years. The Airfoil's new. So, you know, they're definitely not new to Microbrands. They've got some longevity. It's much more reassuring than a new brand coming out with their first release who might never do one again or might not deal with warranty issues. So everything's been really positive. Marvin, the guy who runs Hemel, has been heavily involved in the community. He runs some very large groups. He's really invested in this, and this is his kind of bread and butter. So I just think everything is green light as far as I'm concerned. So I'm really happy with this. So let's talk about the history of the movement. Might as well enjoy the back while we're doing that. I'll try and get the focus on this a little bit better. Hello, focus. There we go. You know, so this movement has a lot of interesting history. Originally, this started life as a Swiss movement, the Venus 175. So you might think, okay, so this is a Chinese movement. Has it been cloned? What's the quality like? Well, not exactly. So what happened was, and this was quite, you know, a number of decades ago, Venus kind of folded. And basically, Seagull ended up getting the manufacturing equipment to make this from Seagull. So from Venus. So they actually got the equipment and they got the design and they improved it. And it's actually become, this movement's used in quite a famous watch now, a Chinese watch that the Chinese military used. And it's actually a more improved movement. And in fact, it's an interesting comp, and people are going to hate me for saying this. I actually find I now prefer this movement to a very famous Swiss chronograph movement, which is the it's a Swiss, it's an ETA now, but it used to be a Valjo 7750. You can get those on Microbrand watches on Kickstarter. They're going to start probably from $800 or $900 because it's a really expensive movement. And I find this to be a better movement in many ways. Sure, there are advantages. Maybe it's almost certainly the ETA is going to be more accurate out the box. But hey, we've got the Swan regulator, guys. But the advantage of this one, this is a column wheel chronograph, and you can really feel it when you start and stop the pushers here. Anybody who's owned the Valjo movement will know that sometimes those pushers can be really stiff, and sometimes you press and you don't quite get it right, and you miss timing something. It can be really annoying. So this is a better movement, in my opinion. They've made other improvements to it. They didn't just let things slide. There's quite a few other variations of the ST19 movement. This is the ST1901 with the 2 subdials, and it's a very straightforward movement, and it's been ultra reliable. We actually have carried this in the store. And just to how reliable this movement is before I even get into that. I mean, this was used back in the day in watches like the Breitling Chronomat, the original Venus 175, and this is now a better movement we have here. So I find these very reliable. I know there's a little bit of a stigma with Chinese movements, and that's fair, because a lot of Chinese movements are complete and utter cow dung. I don't want to be swearing here, being it is going to go on YouTube. But I think you get the idea. But this one here is one of the most famous and better movements you get. And it's basically so reliable. I've had, I've had this watch. I can't remember when I got this, 2017 maybe. I'm trying to remember when I got my Marlowe. Running strong, wear it all the time. And then I have sold other watches, many other brands in the Microbrand store. And I can't recall, and we've sold a couple of other ST19 chronographs. We've sold ones from Mercer, which is another American brand. Hemel are an American microbrand. In fact, Hemel, I believe, maybe do their assembly in-house. I need to check that because it will be a big plus if they do. I need to talk to Marvin about that. But anyway, they're a New York-based microbrand. So we sold ST19 chronographs, some other panda dials from Mercer. And unfortunately, we sold out of those. We bought all the remaining stock and sold out of those as well. So they're well gone. And we also quickly sold out when we had an Italian microbrand that did do all their assembly in Italy that was still using the ST19 movement, Vicaria, which had some really gorgeous chronographs with very nice straps, because Vicaria actually started life as a strap company. So they had some gorgeous Italian leather straps with those that I really liked. So out of those that we've sold, all the Mercers, all of the Vicaria, I might be misremembering this, but to the best of my ability, you know, because we deal with thousands of watches at this point. But I can't ever recall getting a watch returned with a movement issue. We for sure had 1 or 2 issues when we got a couple from Mercer. There were like some scratches on the case or something, so we sent some back and, you know, got that taken care of pretty much. But yeah, I mean, we do get issues from time to time, but in terms of like, oh, the movement stopped working, guys, no, I can't recall any warranty issues with any of the watches that we sold that have ST19 movements. I own a number of watches with these Swiss Valjo movements, chronographs, and also with the ST19, I've got 4 or 5. And I've not had an issue with these. Now, I'm sure there are issues. I'm sure sometimes but it comes down to, more than anything, the build quality. That's what I'm sure about. So if you get this built in a sweatshop somewhere and it's dirty, it's not going to last long, or maybe they didn't oil it or lube it. If you get this built by a reputable watchmaker, then that's a completely different story. So I think it comes down to more like not the movement so much, which seems to be quite reliable, but who stripped it and assembled it, and what factory took care of it, and that kind of a thing. And Hemel have had their hand in the game for a number of years. They know what factories are good and which are bad, and they have a very high focus on customer service. So I think this is a plus, and I can definitely recommend these watches. It's really rare for me to go all out on a watch and just say, wow. I mean, sure, there's a few things I personally don't like, even though this is correct vintage styling with the markers. I would have preferred easier 5-minute marker intervals on the 30-minute timer. Personal taste again. I might have preferred a more kind of a yellowy cream color. Personal taste again, though I think the orange actually makes it interesting. You can wear it with so many very light tan straps, might actually be easier. Okay, confession, I was waxing lyrical and I got a flat battery on my camera here, so that's punishment for me for going on a bit too much. But if you haven't got the picture yet, I absolutely adore this watch. I think it's a fantastic watch that gives my favorite Marlowe Le Monde chronoscope a good run for the money. So I'm just going to, before I do a quick review of this watch, because I want to do this as an interesting comp, another watch from Hemel, just to give you a flavor for what else they tend to carry, and also in case you prefer a steel bezel rather than these styles. I'm going to just quickly do the Lume, and we'll do a nighttime look at the Lume on both of these, and we'll get stuck in. I'm going to use my UV torch here. These have been indoors. And we'll just run it for a couple of minutes. So let's get the lights off and the UV on. So obviously the one on the left, the full reverse Lume, is just amazing. If you haven't got the picture yet, it's just super sharp. The quality is excellent, and I just think it's just like knockout pretty much. The next one along here we're going to be taking a look at is going to be the black one. Different style of Lume for comparison. I'm only lighting these up for a few seconds, but they are going strong. So yeah, it's a little bit different, a little bit busier, just a different style, but that's also a strong Lume as well. But hopefully you can see why I like that Lume on the left so much. And then I will light the one on the right here, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is a different model. It's not one of the airfoils. It's an HF15 is the line. Less Lume on this, but still quite well done. So you could just basically get a Lume pip, and you also get the main Arabic numerals lit, as well as the hour-minute hand, but that's pretty much it. So overall, when it comes to Lume, sorry, this middle one's going out of focus. The camera's having trouble focusing here. Let's get this middle one lit up. Overall, the two Hemels are, yeah, there we go. Sorry, I had the focus wrong. So the Hemels are probably a little bit stronger on the Lume. Sorry, the airfoils are stronger on the Lume, but it's still a decent Lume. As far as chronographs go, the Lume on the right is what you typically get on a chronograph, and as far as the airfoils go, these Lume is every bit as good as a good dive watch. So that is a big plus, and something that I've particularly enjoyed and really appreciated with these watches. So enough of the Lume. Let's get stuck in with this last watch, and then we'll call it a day. And I just wanted to do this as a quick comparison. So if for some reason the airfoil's not for you, but you do like Hemel, Hemel have a lot of military tie-ins. The two airfoils are based upon British 1970s aviator watches. And this one is, I think, more of an American bias with the United States Air Force, American Microbrand, not too surprising. And actually, Hemel even have some licensing agreements with the US Air Force. So they have some pretty good tie-ins there. So this is also a aviator style. You can probably guess that from the basically the fact the way they've chosen to have riveted straps and one or two other features as well. The watch itself is nicely signed also on the crown. The pushers have, you know, kind of a waffle pattern to them. And it's a nice watch, not an exhibition case back. I'll get into why in a minute. But a nice looking watch. And if I was to wind this one, it's got a nice onion, kind of an oniony style crown. So that really speaks to, you know, imagine... I'm trying to imagine Fliegers or whatever. I actually don't need to wind this, which I'm just laughing at. But so if I start this running, you see you got kind of a sweeping second hand there. This, guys, feels like a mechanical watch. It looks like a mechanical watch. The second hand sweeps 5 ticks per second as opposed to 1 you get with the quartz. But it's actually a Mecha-quartz. So that makes this a rather interesting watch. It's probably a similar price point, just slightly cheaper. These are under $450. And it's got the, you know, same 100, I think it's 100 or 200 meters water resistance. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah, 100 meters. So it's the same water resistance, same 42 millimeters. But you actually are kind of getting an interesting choice with these HF15. First of all, you get some extra features. You get the date window at 6 o'clock, which is nice. And you obviously get the very versatile 12-hour, they call it a GMT bezel. It's not really a GMT bezel, but the 12-hour bezel on this, which is also a plus. So I think this is a great watch in terms of functionality. But the one reason I wanted to cover this is Hemel, if they don't have mechanical watches like these airfoils, tend to go for these Mecha-quartz watches. So let's talk about Mecha-quartz pros and cons. And they're really trying to marry the best of both worlds with a mechanical watch and a quartz. So the advantage of a quartz, unless you're going to be talking like a luxury watch that's super expensive, that can run incredibly accurately, like a certain Seiko one, which I won't mention, that can run at like 1 second a month or something accuracy, because we're just talking Microbrand prices here. Pretty much a quartz watch is going to run far more accurately than any mechanical watch. You're talking not a second per day, but usually 1 or a few seconds per month. Or maybe even better than that sometimes. So quartz watches tend to be more accurate than mechanical watches overall, especially at this kind of price point. So that's one advantage of a quartz. Another advantage is that you don't have to wind it. So obviously, even with an automatic watch, sometimes it's going to be stationary and it runs down. You've got to wind it up, it might stop. Or you might need to wind it with a hand-wound watch, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just get into a routine in the morning, winding a watch or whatever it is that you need to do. But still, it's a nice plus in case you forget. So those are the two main pluses of a quartz. A third plus is there's less moving parts, so there's less to go wrong. They tend to last longer. And of course, one of the downsides is, you need to change the battery eventually, but that's not a big deal. Batteries are cheap. You can invest yourself in a $5 tool off of AliExpress and actually do that yourself fairly safely, in my opinion. Or don't have to send it in anywhere to do this. I wish more people would do their own battery changes. And hey, if you do scratch the back of your watch case getting the watch off, if it's a pop-up one, that's just the back of the case. But on something like this, it's a screw-down case, so you're not going to get that issue. Just get the right tool, put it on, turn it, and then you're done. So it might affect the seals, and that's the only reason you might want to, if you're really going to go diving with a watch like this, you might want to take it to a service center for a battery change. But pretty much you can do it yourself once every 3 years or so is the typical longevity of a battery in this particular movement, which is, if you want to know, it is a VK64 Mecha-quartz. But why I like Mecha-quartz as an alternative to mechanical, and I obviously prefer the mechanical. The exhibition caseback's just fantastic. But if you like a quartz, apart from the second hand, instead of ticking 1 tick per second, this one actually ticks at 5 per second, so it looks like a mechanical. You really can't tell the difference. There's no second-hand sub-dial, point that out, which basically means people can't tell it's actually not a more expensive mechanical, which is another advantage of quartz. It's much cheaper typically, or a little bit cheaper at the lower price ranges. So that's a plus. But the plus of a mechanical over the quartz, if this was a pure quartz watch and not a Mecha-quartz, if I was to hit the reset pusher here, it will just electronically be pushed all the way around to the top. Looks nice, but you've got the snap back here. The feel of these pushers are mechanical, because the Mecha-quartz is actually doing a mechanical movement for the pushers. So if I press this, it's an instant reset. You've got the same tactile feel. It feels exactly the same as a mechanical, because it is a mechanical reset and it is a mechanical stop-start. So you've got a very tactile feel to the stop-start. So really, if you didn't know, and this is what makes this one so interesting, if you didn't know it was a Mecha-quartz, and you didn't have a good eye for spotting 5 ticks per second as opposed to 6 on a low beat movement, you just would never know. You would think it would be a mechanical, but there's no winding. So I think this gives you the best of both worlds if you don't care about what's inside. Of course, when it comes down to somebody who's into watches, I think most of us are going to go for these exhibition casebacks. Because it's just so fascinating, so much fun. And I just think these are awesome watches to have. But if it's not your cup of tea, you don't want to have to deal with winding on a regular basis. It's going to be an everyday wear. Or you want better accuracy, so you don't have to keep adjusting the time every every few days or once a week or whatever, then this could be a good option. So definitely worth mentioning. This is the HF15, and we are carrying all three of these in the Microbrand store. And even if you're not interested in buying there, do take a look, because put some more information in the review and the specifications. That can be helpful for you. Again, this is sapphire glass on the front as well, so it's pretty scratch resistant. This is a brushed finish, which might be a little bit more better at hiding scratches perhaps. These are polished finishes, 22mm straps, 20mm straps, sapphire, crystal and ceramic bezel. So basically both of those are scratch resistant. Stronger lume in my opinion. The lume on this is decent. The lume on this is dive watch quality, decent dive watch quality. So there we have it, a nice Hemel line. Our first ones we have in the Microbrand store, and I'm just completely wowed by these and so happy we stocked them. If you've got any questions, once I've calmed down, do let me know, and I'll be happy to address them in the comments. Thanks a lot. Take care.